Please enter the conference PIN number followed by the pound. This call may be recorded. Thank you. You will now be connected. Hello, everyone. This is Arianna, and welcome for joining.
Hello.
We're going to get right to some introductions.
This is Arianna, and welcome for joining. We're going to get right to some introductions. On the phone today, we have our Bernie 2020 Campaign Manager, Faiz Shakir. We have our Senior Advisor, Jeff Weaver. We also have Ben Tulchin, our Campaign Pollster. So, Faiz, I will give you the floor.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be with you on this call. I look forward to crossing paths with many of you on the trail in the days and weeks to come. On a personal note, I just want to say it's an honor to be chosen by Senator Sanders to help manage this campaign, and it's also a great responsibility to ensure that this campaign is living by the values that he cares so deeply about and talks about on the trail. It's early, but we feel good about where we're at. The state of the Sanders campaign is strong and getting stronger. What many of you know is that in 2016, this campaign began as a movement of ideas. I think Senator Sanders wanted to see whether the American public cared deeply about some of the things that he has long believed in. So he ran for president, and Bernie Sanders was right. People really cared deeply about these ideas. They moved in great hordes to his rallies and supported his campaign in ways that were unprecedented and historic. Now, of course, because of that early campaign, he comes into this one with a great name ID and a mission, which is to finish the job. We are therefore building this campaign to win and planning to win at the very outset. You've seen that in some of our early state investments. We'll be announcing some more hires in the days and weeks to come. We are making some early investments in states. We are making an investment in staffing nationally. We've got roughly 70 people on national payroll right now. We've made some moves on fundraising. We've got, as many of you know, $10 million raised in the first week, over 1 million volunteers mobilized to be part of this campaign. We've had some great attendance and participation in some of our early rallies that many of you may have participated in or watched in Chicago and in Brooklyn, and of course this weekend in Iowa and New Hampshire. That, of course, those rallies, when you're seeing thousands of people out there, turns into hopefully a very strong and robust organizing program in the weeks and months to come. So over the next few months, I think, you know, we're in a marathon, not a sprint here. So we've got 11 months for Iowa, and there's going to be a lot of dust kicked up in the many months to come. But I think as the dust settles, there will be, I think, two questions that will resolve this primary. The first being, who can best defeat Donald Trump? Who is the best candidate to defeat Donald Trump? And the second question being, who do we trust to make the change happen that we so desperately seek? And when I think you take those two questions and you answer those two and you draw your Venn diagram, the answer, in my mind as a campaign manager, is unequivocally the answer is Bernie Sanders. I think the voters will come to believe that and understand that as well. And it is our job as a campaign to go forth over the next few months to make clear that he is the best candidate both to beat Donald Trump and deliver the change you so desperately seek. I'm now going to turn it over to Jeff Weaver, our Senior Advisor, who's going to offer some more of the strategic thoughts about how we get from here to there.
Thanks, Faiz, and it's really great to have you on the team, I have to say. It's a person who sat in your chair last time. It's great to have you here, and you're really adding to the great team that's going to be successful next year. I just wanted to speak for a moment about some of the overarching strategic considerations on the campaign and how the campaign is positioned to win in the primaries in 2020. In a minute, Ben Tulchin is going to come on and speak more specifically about some of the polling that we've seen out there. But I wanted to point out some really significant differences between where this campaign starts in 2020 and where we started in 2016 when the senator came very close to winning the nomination in a one-on-one contest. As folks will remember, last time campaign started at the end of April, and by the end of July, we had less than 30 people across, and that included in the states as well, a few folks in New Hampshire and Iowa. As Faiz pointed out, we are building out a robust national team, and we are also in the process of building up strong teams in the first 5 states. And we do talk about, in our campaign, the first 5 states, which includes California, given how early it votes under its early voting system. So we will be building a robust operations in the first 5 and then moving out from there to begin starting to build some smaller teams in Super Tuesday states. The last campaign, we had to spend a tremendous amount of time and resources actually introducing the senator to America and to establishing his name ID across the country. And that really consumed much of the summer and early part of the fall in 2015. The campaign starts now in a position where the senator is almost universally known. The fact that he has been a decades-long champion for working people of all races in this country on important issues like health care, wages, access to education is well known across the country. And so it's an opportunity for the senator to speak much more in depth now on a number of important issues. I think folks saw that during his first 2 events of this season, he spoke a little bit more about himself personally in order to give folks an opportunity to get to know him a little bit better as a person and what motivates him and the policy issues that he has advocated for. I think folks also have noticed that the campaign here in 2020 has a much broader support and, frankly, deeper support. I think if you look at the really impressive co-chairs that we have assembled on this campaign, Senator Nina Turner, Representative Ro Khanna, Mayor Cruz, San Juan, and good government advocate and entrepreneur Ben Cohen, I think you see a team of co-chairs that really represents the breadth of the Sanders coalition behind him in this particular race. And again, Ben will speak more specifically about some of the polling support that we have seen. But one other point that Faiz made, which I think bears a little bit more discussion, that is this race is, by a lot of the measures, a race about electability. Democratic primary voters are very concerned about ensuring that they elect somebody who can defeat Donald Trump. And I think that we have strong indicators from the 2016 race that, in fact, Bernie Sanders is the person who's positioned to do that. He continues to have a very strong appeal among independent voters who are critical to a general election coalition to defeat Donald Trump. He is also wildly popular with younger voters, continues to be. Younger voters, as everyone knows, are less likely to turn out unless motivated by the enthusiasm for a particular candidate, and Bernie Sanders does have that kind of enthusiasm among young people. And as we demonstrated in 2016, and this has been reported in a number of places, written in a number of books, Bernie Sanders really motivated a lot of people to come out and vote either for the first time or to come out for the first time in a long time to vote. And those are the kind of voters that the Democratic Party needs to bring into the fold and to add to its coalition in order to be successful in 2020, both at the presidential level but down ballot as well. And so Bernie Sanders is the candidate in this race who is capable of putting together that unique coalition that goes across all races, across all regions, that is capable of defeating this really disastrous administration. So on that note, I will turn it over to Ben Tulchin, our pollster.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Faiz and Arianna. Yes, so as a campaign pollster, I'm here to talk about Bernie's poll numbers, and I can tell you that they're very, very, very good. In fact, we believe the polling data clearly shows that Bernie is extremely well positioned to win the Democratic primary and to defeat Donald Trump in a general election matchup. Let me kind of highlight some key findings that we've been seeing as we analyze the data. We've been analyzing data very carefully the last few months. First of all, Sanders leads the current field in the Democratic presidential primary horse race in both national and early state polling by double digits. He's had a solidly consistent lead over the last few months. Every poll has shown him clearly double digits ahead of any other announced candidate. And he's also gotten a real bounce since his announcement a few weeks ago, and really the only so he's had a lead from the beginning as other candidates have come and announced made their grand announcement. and then Bernie made his, Bernie's gained ground in that context. So starts off with a very strong position and has gotten even stronger since the official launch of his campaign. And a major reason why Bernie's doing as well as he is he's highly popular with Democrats and his broad-based appeal with the primary electorate. As Jeff mentioned, unlike when Bernie ran in 2016, he started the campaign with very limited name ID. Sanders begins this race nearly universally well known, and he's well liked among likely Democratic primary voters and caucus goers. In fact, he emerged out of the 2016 race as one of the country's most popular elected officials, and he's maintained that position since then. And he's by far more popular than any of the announced candidates in the race, and his popularity extends across gender, ethnic, and generational lines. In fact, and based on over 10 national surveys conducted since December 2018, Sanders' average favorability is well over 70%, and the most recent poll, the Morning Consult poll, has his favorability at 75% of Democratic primary voters. So he's very, very popular with Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents. And as Jeff talked about the diversity of our coalition and the co-chairs, well, that's true with the voters supporting Sanders right now. Notably, based on recent polling data, half of Sanders' voters are women, and nearly half are voters of color, including Latinos and African Americans. And this is obviously a very different place today than we were in 2016, where we had to introduce the senator to all voters, especially voters of color, and we started essentially at zero and had to build him up. Now we're starting this campaign with a base among African Americans and Latinos, and it puts them in a much better position to win the primary this time around. And specifically, let me highlight some key data points. Among Latinos, Senator Sanders is the leading Democratic candidate, announced or unannounced, among Latinos. And pretty much every recent national survey, the last several that we've seen that has released this data, Sanders is leading among Latinos in favorability ratings and in the primary horse race. And that has huge implications in the early states. As Jeff talked about the first five, well, Nevada and California obviously have large Latino populations, so that puts Senator Sanders in a very, very strong position in those two early states, and in Texas, of course, with another state with a large Latino population. And it has real general election implications. I think about Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Florida, and Arizona all have sizable Latino populations. And the fact that the senator is the most popular elected official in the country with Latinos right now puts him in a unique position to do well both in the primary and in the general election with that support from Latinos. And I also want to talk about Bernie's newfound support with African Americans. Over the course of the 2016 campaign, Bernie gained ground with African Americans over time. At the beginning, he started with almost no support, and over the course of the campaign, he gained ground, especially with younger African Americans, but he did make progress with older African Americans as well. And now Bernie is starting with the base with African Americans that he didn't have last time, and it puts them in contention in states with large African American populations. In fact, recent polling has them leading again by double digits over all other announced candidates in the Democratic primary, and his favorability ratings are very, very high with African Americans. So Sanders comes into this campaign in a very, very different position with voters of color than he did in the previous campaign, and it puts him in a very strong position to win the Democratic primary as a result of that broad, diverse coalition he has. Faz and Jeff talked about grassroots energy, grassroots support. You see the intensity of Sanders support showing up in how many volunteers and donors we have, and that's going to have huge implications in the primary and early caucus states, especially in caucus states like Iowa and Nevada, where it takes a lot of commitment to show up in caucus for your candidate. So we feel very, very good about the intensity of our support and how that plays out in the primary. Now, I also want to talk about the general election, and because, as Jeff mentioned, we believe that, and a lot of polling has shown that Democratic primary voters are very concerned about electability. Can whoever the nominee is defeat Trump? And all the data clearly shows that Bernie is a very, very strong candidate when it comes to defeating Trump, and we believe he's uniquely positioned and uniquely strong in that category. Recent national polling has Bernie defeating Trump in a general election matchup by 10 points, 51 to 41. That's a PPP poll that was done a few weeks ago before Bernie's announcement, where he's gained even more ground, quite frankly. And Bernie does much better than any other announced candidate in a head-to-head with Trump, and beating them by with a greater margin by almost 2x. So Bernie's, and we saw that in the 2016 race too, quite frankly, where Bernie was consistently beating Trump by double digits, and that trend has continued into the 2020 election cycle. And a few key reasons as to why Bernie is doing as well as he is against Trump. One, Bernie has real strength in the upper Midwest and the blue wall states, if you will. Recall he won Michigan and Wisconsin primaries in 2016. His poll numbers in both Wisconsin and Michigan have continued to be very, very good. In fact, a recent poll in Michigan found Bernie beating Trump in a general election matchup by 11 points, so even bigger margin than his national margin. And it comes down to his strength among two key constituencies, independents, as Jeff mentioned. Polling data clearly shows Bernie doing well with independents. He won 61% of them in the primary last time. In pretty much every national poll, Bernie is leading with independents in a Democratic primary horse race. And national polling, general election polling, shows Bernie doing better than any other announced candidate among independents in a head-to-head matchup with Trump. So, and Bernie also does well with working-class voters. So the combination of Bernie doing well with working-class voters and well with independents puts him in a very strong position to defeat Trump in a general election, especially in those essential blue wall states. So that wraps up my presentation.
All right, folks. So if anyone has any questions, if you dial 1, we will gather a few of those and try and get as many in as we can. So Sean Sullivan from the Post.
Thanks, everybody, for doing this call. Ben, you talked a little bit about the improvement that Senator Sanders has experienced with African-American voters over time, but can you speak a little bit more about what the campaign strategy is going to be to improve its standing among black voters, particularly in South Carolina, where he's headed later this week and where he did not perform very well on the 2016 primary?
Sure, I can address it. Yeah, Jeff, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, look, I think we're going to, there's a few things in South Carolina. So I think the senator starts with a strong base of support in South Carolina upon which to build. The senator has already been to South Carolina. We'll be back down there soon. So the senator will certainly be appearing in South Carolina much more frequently than he did last time. In addition to that, I think we are going to build a stronger team on the ground and much earlier in the process. And we are working with some local supporters, including local electeds in South Carolina, to build that team right now, the type of team that is capable of winning. So I think both in terms of the senator's personal appearances and the strength of the team we're building on the ground, I think those will both be key new factors in helping him succeed in South Carolina.
And I'll just add to that. I mean, Sean, the reality is that look, last time we started at 0, right? And we had to introduce the senator to voters around the country, and they had no idea who he was coming in. They didn't know his story. Now they know him. He's well-known and well-liked, but they don't still know his full story, and that's why, we felt it was important to tell more of his personal story in Brooklyn and Chicago, especially Chicago, his lifelong commitment to civil rights and how he's committed to economic and racial justice in this country. And we just really had a very limited time to tell that story last time, and now we have a much longer window to be able to, tell that side of a story of Senator's lifelong commitment to economic and racial justice. And, I think we can build on the strength he's already got with African Americans that we just weren't able to do last time. So we're just in a very different place, and have a longer time to introduce him and tell a different, show a different side of him that we weren't really able to do last time.
All right, Greg Krieg at CNN.
Hey there, thanks guys. Just a pretty simple one for anyone who wants to take it. Is there a time frame now on when Senator is going to release his tax returns?
The only thing I can say is soon. We're working on it. Stay tuned.
All right, next up we have John at Business Insider.
Hi, yes. Thanks for joining us today. So earlier, yesterday actually, Julian Castro seemed to reject what Senator Sanders said about reparations on The View. And we're speaking here about issues that might matter to voters of color. And this seems to be one of those issues. And of course, on The View, Sanders said, well, I don't explicitly endorse this policy because I don't think that handing out a check is the best way to deal with this. And Julian Castro essentially said that, well, perhaps some of Sanders' policies, such as Medicare for All and tuition-free college, are akin to giving out a check. So how does the campaign respond to this type of criticism? Do they think it's fair? And do we think that Sanders' position and some of his statements on reparations might hurt him with voters of color?
As Ben referenced, Sanders had a lifelong commitment to racial and economic justice. It's borne out by the story he's told and also the stances that he's taken and the fights that he has waged. Those of you who listened to the Chicago speech heard him talk about the racial wealth gap in America, as he referred to it, the disparity within the disparity, an issue he cares deeply about. And as we think about how to address it, it is true that he has said that a one-time remuneration isn't the best way and the adequate way to deal with a structural problem. The way you deal with a structural problem is a structural solution. We all know from the fact that from Ta-Nehisi Coates and others who've written a lot about this, that many government programs were done with a discriminatory lens, a lens by which people excluded people of color. And what you're hearing from Senator Sanders is that we need to have an inclusive lens, understanding that people of color must benefit from universal programs. I think you've also seen him at the CNN town hall discuss that he supports Representative Clyburn's 10-20-30 program to invest in impoverished communities. I think this is a worthy debate, and I appreciate all of the candidates offering their thoughts and ideas. No one's got the magic solution. We've had an awful legacy of slavery, awful legacy of racial disparities across so many different areas. Anyone who tells you they got a magic bullet here is lying to you. But I do think that this effort to play politics with it does a disservice to the fact that Senator Sanders, as Ben mentioned, has been a lifelong advocate for racial and economic justice.
All right, and we're going to take one more. Janet Hook.
Yes. Hi, guys. Thanks for doing this. I was interested in two things. One, how you see the senator doing among women voters now and maybe compared to the last time. And separately, but kind of related, is how you see his appeal and constituency compared to Senator Warren's. They agree on so many issues.
Ben, you want to start with?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that I highlighted one key poll finding, which is half of senators' support right now are women, right? So I think that, which I think dispels kind of the notion of what some people may have had about who's supporting the senator. So I just think the fact that half the supporters are women, nearly half are voters of color, including Latinos and African Americans, he's clearly doing quite well with women voters. And in fact, in the national general election polling, he's actually doing better in a head-to-head with Trump among women than the female candidates, the announced female candidates. So I think that, the fact that Bernie's really popular with Democrats, Democrat-leaning independents, he's popular with independents, standalone independents, especially in a matchup against Trump, I think, it tells me that voters, both men and women, are responding well to his candidacy and support him for his impressive track record, and they view him as honest and authentic, and his ability to kind of critique the political and economic status quo, and that resonates with a large swath of voters, both male and female. So that's what we're seeing, that he's who Bernie is and his message is resonating across gender lines.
I'll take the question on Senator Warren. I think my response there to all of the candidates in the field, quite frankly, is jump on in. The water's warm. More room in the pool for you. We welcome everyone. This is a campaign of ideas. Many of you know that Senator Sanders has great affection for Senator Warren. They've been lifelong kind of, at least for decades, been partners and fighting for working families. So this is a campaign for ideas. Senator Sanders is not going to turn this into the politics of demonization and personal mudslinging against others. Really, this is an opportunity to air out the ideas that people care about, and ultimately voters get to decide. So we feel confident about the case we have to make, and look forward to the results.